Morning, everyone. Good evening, I guess, and good afternoon from all over from all over the world. It's wonderful to gather here in this time of social isolation and separation that we find ourselves in, each of us to varying degrees in our home country. The sweetness of togetherness is made, more special and more highlighted. And so it's wonderful that we can use our technology to come together. Um, of course, we're in a period of much stress. Each of us has a story about this, a story that we're still trying to find words for, still trying to hopefully one day make sense out of what has happened here. And the question that I have in my back of my mind is, initially was, okay, well, are we equipped? Are we equipped for the times we find ourselves in with the health challenges and worldwide? Are we going to be able to find a way through this? And of course, knowing what I know about developmental science, the answer is yes. Yes, I do believe human beings are equipped for this. We're equipped for the unknown. We're equipped for uncertainty. We're equipped to find our way through. We're equipped to be adaptive and to be changed by the things we cannot change. So, yes, once I found an answer to that, I felt assured, okay, we might not have all the answers, but I know that we have and we are equipped to be able to find our way through here. Once I assured myself that, yes, I think we are equipped to find, for the days that we find ourselves in, that we weren't meant to have all the answers, but we can find our way through, I felt a lot better, obviously, about about that. And so I was thinking to myself, what are the things that I'm experiencing right now? What is going on? How do we find our way through? And then I became much more aware of the symptoms that I was experiencing, and maybe some of you are experiencing some of the same symptoms. And I'll just go through some of them in the face of social isolation and uncertainty. Just feeling more numb, not feeling. Actually, that's the whole point. Feeling things, actually a calmness amidst something that seems so crazy. How is it that my emotions can seem so level? How come it's harder to pay attention to getting tasks done? How come my body seems to want to move so much? How come when I look at the food in my fridge or bare shelves in the stock in the grocery market, that I feel this unease about me, this restlessness that comes to the surface? What is this about, you know, um, feeling like time has slowed down, but has also become more accentuated at the same time, and paying attention to every detail? And yet, at the same time, when I look back at my calendar for the last week, I feel like I've lived a month. It's hard to count the days and think it's only been 3 days. It feels like it's been 3 years. That's an exaggeration, of course. And then, finding myself feeling somewhat guilty that life has slowed down a little bit, and enjoying it, and finding some pleasure in solitude, and finding pleasure in just being with my family. And so these things here, this whole mixing of emotion, of moving from one feeling to the not feeling, but one emotion to the next. It's quite the thing, and to feel yourself in the being in the middle now. Um, of course, worrying about the people that I care about, and about the elders in my life. There's so much, but one of the things that I found that is missing are my tears. It's incredible to believe so much in tears, to know that I'm facing so many futilities in so many areas, and to be without tears is so interesting, to know this on a cognitive level, but not be able to emotionally get to them. I know they're important. I value them. I wish I could cry them. I know there'd be tremendous release there. However, they're not there. Sometimes they squeak out of me. Sometimes I start to leak. If something gets past that membrane, there seems to be a membrane around me that prevents me from feeling the futility here. Um, it's usually a story about, it's usually a story that gets to me, that of someone that I care about, that usually stirs me up. One of my friends, her husband is leading the COVID team at Vancouver General Hospital. That was incredible. When I heard that, when I saw the numbers, some of the numbers decline, I was full of tears. When I see, signs of hope about vaccines or drugs that are working, I find my tears leak out of me, but they're few and far between. They are missing. My missing tears are a symptom. And so, yes, we talk a lot about the symptoms that come from COVID, but what are the emotional symptoms that we are experiencing? And these would be some of them. And I can see for a lot of you, you're echoing that sense that yes, numbness, restlessness, the absence of tears are the emotional symptoms and the byproduct of the situation that we find ourselves in. So the question then is I thought, well, what do we do about these symptoms? What can be done? What do we have to worry about? What is ahead for us here as we navigate these uncharted territory? What is uncharted, and what is it that we actually know about our way through? And so, of course, what do we need? It became really clear to me that what we need actually is an understanding of play, not just now, but for the days ahead and to taking us through this. How is it that we will find our way back to being restored to our playfulness, to our tears, and to our capacity to be grabbed, for our attention to be grabbed by something that isn't alarm based like COVID? And so I hope to make a little bit of headway on that. I don't promise to make sense out of everything because I think that's not what's needed right now in terms of making sense of what's happening to us. I think it's about finding our way through right now and anchoring into those things that we know will help us. It might seem weird that play would be the answer here. Some of us don't have the luxury of play. Some of our frontline workers don't have the luxury of play. Um, as they work exhausting hours and days to help us find a way through. But I would argue that even for them, this is still the answer as well. So let's talk a little bit about why play is the answer, and then talk a little bit about play. The problem here is that we're facing separation. As we all know, attachment is our most important need. It's our fundamental need for survival. That contact and closeness and feeling cared for, feeling provided for. It's not just about human connection, it's about that sense of being taken care of. That we are safe in the context of our caring relationships. We're not necessarily safe from the world, but we're safe in the context of our caring relationships. And when things that we care about, people and things, we face separation from that, it releases an emotional tsunami. And the emotions that are primal, you can't get rid of these. They're never going to be altered inside of us. They are absolutely part of the mammalian emotional system. Is pursuit to get back what has been lost, and that intensifies because you're trying to reduce the separation. Many of you may have found yourself doing all sorts of things like contacting people that you hadn't contacted for a while, listening or, doing some familiar things that find a strange comfort to you. Like I find just being out in my garden and just the regular routine and structure, pursuing those things is incredibly soothing. It closes that sense of feeling separated or outside of the norm of everyday life. You may find yourself having levels of foul frustration here. There's lots of things we can't change, but of course that foul frustration can just sneak out of us at all sorts of times. My husband the other day, I was moving something in the garden. He was asking me, "Well, why don't we plant, the potatoes over here or whatever?" And I just found myself getting incredibly angry at him. Well, I know where the potatoes go and blah, 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 blah. And I thought, well, that's kind of ridiculous, isn't it? That's a bit of a strong response. The poor guy just asked a question. Why am I biting off his head? Why? Because the frustration is just underneath the surface here. Because why we're facing unprecedented separation. Certainly in many of our lives, it's unprecedented. Some people have lived with incredible separation all their lives as well. And so this just adds to it. And you may also will find that the feelings of panic, that tight-chested or whatever it is, those waves that come where our head starts spinning, the nightmares, all sorts of expressions of alarm, feeling afraid about things that may or may not be present in our life. The anticipation of things can get us going, our imagination taking off. And so here we find ourselves. The problem is that we're facing too much separation. And so we have all these emotions of pursuit, of frustration, and of alarm. And here we go. Here we go. They just take off and they have a life of their own. So the question then is, these are not, these emotions are not problems. They're trying to solve the the problem of separation here. The brain isn't broken. It's stirring us up to make us pay attention, to make us hold on, to stay close, and to try to change the things we can. And of course, but we're faced with things that are futile here. There's so many futilities. And the problem is, of course, is what is the answer to futility? It's tears, and yet we're short on our tears as well. So here's the problem, is that we're facing unprecedented separation. We have so much emotional energy going to fix a problem that can't be fixed. We need our tears to help drain these emotions, but of course, we don't have them. And so what happens is that the brain is capable of feeling separation on, to some degree, and being able to find tears and work their way through and to find words from it. This is from our anxiety course slide. Being slighted by your peers, being different from others, not being liked by a teacher, not being chosen, not invited to a birthday party, can't find a teddy bear, grandma might pass away. These are all pretty huge things in terms of our emotional system. But the things that rock us to the core is any kind of huge separation, bigger on the Richter scale, the epicenter as it is, maternal rejection, not invited into the presence of a primary attachment, and of course, separation from the life we are attached to. This is where some of us are living more or less to different degrees. And so, of course, our alarm system is going bananas. We are faced with tons and tons of emotion, whether this is real or anticipatory. This is the challenge that we find ourselves in. So what does the brain do when it feels lots of alarm? We become blinded by it. The brain shuts it down. Nope, don't look at it. Don't talk about it. Don't say those words. Let's talk about something else. And so you get all this alarm that is activated in your body. All of the frustration, all of the pursuit, all of it is absolutely activated. And so but we can't see it directly. We can't look at it head on. Why? Because it absolutely is too much. It's too overwhelming. The more you look at it, the more you're paralyzed by it. We need to get stuff done. We need to figure things out. We have pressures on our doorstep that to different degrees to all of us. Things are changing daily. We need to pay attention. We need to be able to make plans, even if we can't see the future. And so the problem is that when our emotions are displaced from consciousness, when we cannot make sense of them all, when there is sheer overwhelm in the system, this is where it gives rise to obsessions and irrational reasons, cognitive backfill. And I'll give you an example of this. Toilet paper. Toilet paper. Toilet paper has become the cognitive backfill for this epidemic. This is actually taken from Australia, an Australian store, but you could find this in lots of countries, in Canada as well, the US as well. So here they've got all this toilet paper stocked, and they've just opened the doors here, and here we go. The hordes are coming in. First place they go to. Now listen, look at that. Is that alcohol on the other side? That's unbelievable. Alcohol on the right side, and they're all going for toilet paper. This is incredible. The better soothing agent here actually for anxiety is actually the alcohol. Not that I'm recommending it. I'm just saying it would be a better bet. And here we go. More and more toilet paper. And the headlines have been, why are people buying so much toilet paper amid the coronavirus outbreak? And the simple answer is this, is that the brain is not broken. If you wanted the developmental science reason for this, is that this is what we do to cover our ass and to survive when you're blind to the real source of separation for reasons of emotional defense. This is about emotional defense. We can't look at it head on. We can't look at it head on. We're trying to deal with crap without looking at the crap. So what do? We buy toilet paper. It's such an interesting fix in the brain, but because we're just not conscious. We're not conscious. We can do something, right? We can buy toilet paper. But the toilet paper is symbolic, I think, in so many ways. It's about distress. It's about separation. It is about crap. There are so many. It's about covering our ass. I mean, if you look at the puns and the wordplay on this, it's very clear that this is all about separation. A much better bet would be to buy other things. If truly you were in this place, it would be to buy flour. It would be to buy things that could sustain you for a certain length of time. Toilet paper is not that thing. I was in the lineup at Costco and, I was there and I'm like, oh, you guys don't have any toilet paper. And I just kind of laughed. And she said, no, that went a long time ago. I said, oh, okay, no problem. And I said, yeah, everyone's just trying to cover their ass. And the lady behind me looked shocked. And then she started to laugh because when you pull it out on the surface, you actually see um, what has happened here is that we've become disconnected. And this is what happens with stress, is that the stress response is more emotion but less feeling. We're not making sense of things. Why? Not because we're stupid, not because we don't care, but because it's just too much. There's just too much separation. It's too hard to name. It's too hard to find our words for. I can't even find my tears for it because I can't even find my words for it half the time. And sometimes I don't even want to find my words because it's just too much. So what do? We're in the middle of a stress response where we have more emotion being stirred up all the time and we don't have feelings. Why are feelings important though? Why are feelings important? What we know is that the brain moves emotion, takes intake from the body up into the brain and then back out to the body in this reciprocal routing system that helps inform us about the world. And so we get information through the brainstem. It's processed here in the temporal, parietal lobes, the emotional centers of the brain. It sends up information into the frontal cortex to help make sense, where we find our words, where we can reflect. And this all ideally sends things out through the emotional system back out into the body and then back up again. Now, what happens under stress? What happens under stress? This frontal lobe takes a lot of power. It takes a lot of energy, and it's not very fast acting. This part of the brain, the emotional parts of the brain, and the brainstem, working on instinct, they're fast acting. And so what happens is that our blood flow and our energy, the brain conserves it under times of stress and says, hey, this is a fast acting system. Let's make sense here. Let's make sense of the world here. And for reasons of emotional defense, because it's too much, it's too big, to find our words and to find would move us to our tears and to the emotions that would get in the way of surviving, of taking care of business, of getting the work done that needs to get done. And so the brain has put a moratorium in stress on moving things into this frontal cortex, into moving it into words. The very fact that I can talk about this in a logical way without emotion is evidence of that. It's incredible. It's incredible to talk about something so cognitive that is happening to you, to be reflective on it, to understand it, and yet not be in it. This is incredible. This is not a brain that is not working well. It is a brain that's protecting itself from too much emotion. Now, here's the challenge, of course. Thank you. Here's the challenge, of course, is that we know that we are facing more emotion than we can process. Well, what's the repercussion of that? We know that we're a species that needs to have our feelings. We know that this is the way that that long term, how we grow, how we're able to communicate who we are, to transform. We know that we have an emotional buildup problem. When feelings get in the way of doing the work that we need to do, our brain doesn't process, doesn't make into feelings. We can't make sense of it. We can't find our words. And the more and more and more this happens, the more you have emotional buildup. This is the problem. Feelings are important. Feelings are important to growth and development. Feelings are important to well-being. Feelings are the way that we change, transform, become adaptable, to find our way through adversity and to thrive. And so our feelings are important. They need to come back. They are who we are. And yet the emotions are so big underneath it that it's hard for the brain to process it and says, hey, we're not going to process all of this right now because it's too big, it's too much. And so, where do we find rest? How do we find rest? What are we, and how do we get our feelings back? We know that defenses would be in operation under times of stress, and that's okay. That's what a good brain does. But there has to be a day where feelings come back, where emotions are allowed to come to the surface, and where words are found. Is that what we should be striving for right now? And the answer is, if it comes to you and you're able to do that, good, great. You can certainly yearn in that direction, but I think it's just too much. It's just too much as well. And so we have to be thoughtful about that. But what is the answer? The answer here is that under stress, we lose our vulnerable emotions and thus our capacity to our feelings. We also lose our playfulness and become more restless. Is there an answer here? Is there an answer to all of this stress? When we have defenses shaping up around our emotions and losing our feelings, is there an answer here to provide some reprieve, to provide some rest, to allow us to find a way through here? How is this going to work, long term and short term? Let's just focus on the short term right now. Because the long-term ramifications is if we exist in this state of more emotion and less feeling, we're going to have increasing problem behavior. You know that restlessness and attention problems begets other problems. You know your frustration when it unleashes leads to hurt feelings potentially, leads to relationship challenges, the relationships that we need right now to stay close. And so, yes, we need to find a way through our intense pursuit. What is it that we stay close to? What is it that we're going to hang on to that's going to provide some rest or reprieve in periods of high stress? And so, and the long term is what do we do in this emotional buildup with less feeling when we know our feelings are going to be necessary to help us get through this? So, the challenge that we face is that we're in this stress state where more emotion and less feeling can lead to more problem behavior in us as well as in our children. And so we have to find a way for release. However, the thinking part of our brain is overwhelmed. The emotions can't all be processed. So, what did nature give us? Nature gave us the capacity to be resilient. And play is such a huge part of that. This is the journey that we need to take. This is the journey, when facing adversity, is that there is a letdown. There's a letdown into tears. There is a letdown when we can find our words, when we can find our feelings, when our emotions come home, when they make sense to us, when we can tell our stories. There is a bounce back. Yes, this is true. However, there is another way to get the bounce back. There's another way to have some rest here, and that doesn't require tears. And that, of course, is play, because many of us don't have access to our tears. The emotional overload is too much. The words that would bring us to our tears are missing. Why? Because it's too hard to name what it is that scares us too much. It's uh, we have a long journey here to figure that piece out. So, how do we do this emotional journey? How do we have some release here so that we can find some rest, so we can ready ourselves for a day where we'll bounce back and restore to our playfulness and to a sense of rest again? How is it that, for more long lasting types of rest? What are the way stations? What can we do to provide an oasis in the middle of the desert here that we find ourselves in, an island in the middle of the storm? What is the answer here? And the answer is play, of course, right? Because this is all too real. There's too many emotions here. It's all too real. And I don't think we can look at it head on. We have this emotional buildup problem, like the pressure cooker that is threatening to, blow. You'll find it leaking out of yourselves. You disagree with, some of the things that you might even be doing. The words that you're saying, the thoughts that you're having. They say, that's not me. That's not how I. That's not how I roll. That's not me. Why is this coming out? Why am I frustrated with my children? Why am I just it's just like, what has happened to me here? Uh, because there's emotional buildup and the brain's trying hard to hold it together because survival is key. But we need some release. And so that is what nature gave us. It gave us play. When nature gave us all these emotions to take care of us, to help us find our way through, especially in times of stress, it also gave us play to take care of our emotion. This is what we don't understand. See, we often, not only do we think that emotion is a problem, emotion isn't a problem, it's doing a really, it's working really hard right now to take care of us with pursuit, frustration, and alarm. It's trying to close a gap, but it's facing such futility here, things that we can only find tears for. But we can't find our tears without our words and our emotions and the vulnerability that's required around it. So the backup plan here, or not even a backup plan, but also what should be part of our lives to take care of this, especially in times like this, to take care of the overload, to take care of the overwhelm, the things that we can't find words for, the things that we can't look at directly, is play. Play is the answer. Now it seems so frivolous. Oh, to play. Oh, at a time of such high stress. But it is absolutely critical. Why? Because it's a pressure valve. It's a pressure valve. It takes care of us. It takes care of us to preserve us so that the emotions have a release. The emotions, remember if you, if you've done the motion course with Gordon, you know that emotions seek expression. Emotions need to move. Emotions don't stop just because we might disagree with having them or because we think they're inconvenient. Emotions are trying to take care of us. They move us to be alarmed about the things that we should be alarmed by. I know touching your face and has or washing your hands and being thoughtful about the environment you're in. All of these attention to details is an alarm system working really hard to take care of you. Um, the frustration we feel is about all the futilities we face, the futilities that we must face, not going out, not having the same sense of freedom. If you can't face your futility here, then of course you're going to be in harm's way, which some people are. And so you see that your emotions are working really hard to help you survive, but there's too much. Putting it into words like talking and finding your words for this stuff, it's overrated, I gotta say. This is not a time for talk therapy in many ways. I think this is a time for play. This is a time to put things into a place that don't require words. This is a time to open up the valves that will provide some rest and release, even if albeit temporarily. This is a place that can serve as a shield for our children in a time of great stress. This provides a protective bubble over them. And nature can take the lead here with them and take care of them emotionally as they have an incredible discharge in play. So play, when I was thinking about it, it's not talking about resiliency, although it's important to have a reminder that we are resilient, I think. Um, it's not talking about tears because that's just to me right now a cognitive exercise. But what is important to see is that play actually is the place of rest that we need. A place is the place that is going to help us find some calm in the storm, not because things are calm, but because play is without the realities of everyday life. It is not work. It is not for real. It allows us to express what is there. It is safe in the sense that one shouldn't emotionally be harmed or hurt here. The sense of agency, a sense of your own will is preserved. It is engaging. It carries you. That sense of time is lost in play. When I go out into my garden and I'm fiddling around there. The day goes by and I find that sense of being much more restored and balanced, restful at the end of having been outside for just a little bit. And so play is a space that we can go into to help preserve us emotionally. And for our children, it is the best place to be in terms of being protected from some of the realities. I think someone said before we should be very thoughtful about how we talk about what is happening in our world with our children listening. It is too alarming. It is too much what they see, or the adults don't have the answers, that their adults are alarmed. Here in Canada, even our Prime Minister, his wife has COVID, and he's trying to lead our country in isolation. A friend said to me, she heard a reporter say that he seems to be growing up before our eyes, the sense of having to take the lead. But We don't need our children to see these things. And so, what is the best place to protect them from this? Obviously, it's being thoughtful about how we communicate in front of our children, but it's obviously play. It's this place that isn't work. Nothing has to work out here. Their mistakes, failures doesn't matter. It's not for real. Consequences don't matter here. You can play going in and out of your house as much as you want. There's no social isolation in play. It's a perfect place to release counterwill, resistance, and opposition about all these things. And so play is what can engage us and provide some rest. It is the only resting state that we have when we are conscious. And it helps the emotions. Some people would say regulate, become more regulated if they're dysregulated. I don't like using that language. I just find it confusing and not intuitive. We get overwhelmed, we get overloaded, we need some rest. The brain can't operate at that level. We must conserve our energy. We must conserve our capacity to find and think our way through, and we need places of rest. And so play offers us that refuge. That's what play is. What does a good play look like? Well, we'll talk about that. But we have to remember that the ultimate challenge here in our emotional health and well being is in facing the very separation that triggers emotional tsunamis. It's not just the physical aspects here that are worrisome. I'm worried about our emotions. I'm worried about what we need to do to restore ourselves to our playfulness, to our restfulness, to our tears again, where we can face futilities head on. And so, how is it that we preserve ourselves? Well, we have to lean into what nature gave us to take care of us, which is play. Play allows us to have a unique opportunity to take a sideways glimpse at what is unbearable while feeling completely safe, one step removed. The memes that come out, the funny things on the internet that you see coming out, the dark humor that comes out. This is all an aspect of play. Um, Yes, cooking is absolutely about play. It can be if you feel enough. It's playful if you have some sense of security around your food sources. If it's not, then I think it tips into a whole other level where you get much more pursuit and frustration and alarm around it. If you have some sense of security around food, albeit tenuous, but enough security, I think it can push it into play for sure. Um, and you don't have to look at things head on when you're doing this, which is of course where the rest comes. And of course, Italy gave us such a beautiful example of play as a safety valve, right? The escape valve in tight places. Look at this. I mean, it's all there. The singing to give expression. How many of you have found music has moved you to tears or moved you to expression, or you find yourself gravitating? Um, to the music, to the dance, to the whatever it is, and in such tight spaces, in that pressure cooker that you find yourself in, it is the answer. There is so much freedom. There can be so much release what's that? I can't remember who had the poem. I know why the caged bird sings. I think it's a poem. I know why the caged bird sings. Why? Because it's the release. It's yeah, Maya Angelou, thank you. It's what gives us it allows for emotional expression without knowing what it is. You don't have to have feelings for this. There is release. And again, what we find is that rest. We find the oasis in the desert, the island in the ocean. And so there are different emotions that we'll have to play with now. Play with alarm, play with frustration, play with pursuit. This is, of course, from Gordon's play course. How do we play with alarm? Peekaboo, rescue play, hide and seek, dare games, monsters, creatures, scary stories, games, tumble play, wrestling, whatever it is. Frustration is about changing things, altering shape. We've been doing a lot of frustration play in our house. We've been doing a lot of sewing. I've been doing a lot of gardening, building, growing, planting, waiting, changing things. They're beautiful, beautiful ways to express frustration and feel productive with one's frustration. Sewing, making quilts. My kids have been laughing and playing with their friends online. And it's wonderful. It's wonderful medicine to hear them laugh. They're teenagers because they have enough awareness, of course, what's going on as teenagers. But to hear them laugh, to know that they are in play and their hearts are preserved is a wonderful thing as a parent. When this first started, when COVID first started happening, my father-in-law was visiting us from Mexico on his way home to Montreal. And he plays the guitar. My husband plays the guitar, and we have a karaoke machine. And I said, well, I think we just need to have some sing-alongs. And there was the three of us singing and playing music. Um, and it was wonderful for 2 nights in a row. That's how we put ourselves to bed, just to carry us over the separation that came when the sun went down and we faced nighttime. Again, it was our song, it was our stories that took us over this hump. That I could find the rest that I needed. So when we are playing, all of these emotions are coming out. We don't have to think so much about, well, what emotion is coming out now in play. Oftentimes, if you can just get your kids to this, if you can get yourself to this, if you can find your channel that opens up the play inside of you, that answers some sort of expression that is needed inside of you, I think this is the answer here. And I can see in the chat here, a lot of you are talking about this. The Nancy, your friend's calling you about the hoarder's hotline. I love that. The dark humor that comes. Virtual dance parties, right? Singing the sing along at the around the kitchen last night, Tamara, right? The hide and seek, the crafting, the drawing, the collage, the singing, cooking, baking, sidewalk chalk drawing, learning French again, right? Um, these are all these are all channels for expression that we would say is play. And yes, are we calmer afterwards? Yes. Are we still in the middle of the storm? Yes. But man, oh man, do we need an island in the middle of the storm. And that is what these provide. And so to play we go. Now you might think this is, well, what about our frontline workers? Well, my sister's a frontline worker. She's a funeral director, and she's right on the front lines in preparing and planning and helping people through this. And so I said, we need a virtual chat to check in. So I set up a virtual chat for my family, and we checked in, and my sister was off her shift, and she uh, she we started to play. We played, we joked, we laughed about our day, the silly things that we're doing, how life has changed to the ridiculous. And the more we talked, the more I could see my sister laugh, the more I saw the rest in her face. The more I saw rest, the more I felt I was helping her survive what she needs to do every day as a frontline worker. So I think it's for everybody. It's not for those that are just isolated at home. It's for everybody that's on the front line of this, and especially for them, and especially as we find our way through this crisis. So why is play so important? Because play is what restores feelings. Emotions don't have to work in play. They can be freely expressed. We don't have to get it right. It's not real. They don't overwhelm the system in the same way. They don't provoke defenses because it's not real. It's safe, so feelings don't get hurt. They don't get more stirred up. They don't become bigger here. They become more rested. They're freer to move, so we can identify them. We can actually find words like frustration. We could find our words about things that alarm us. Um, and even if we can't find our words, it's not a problem because we have this ultimate place to express where nothing gets in the way of expression. And it's not about real life. And so we can find some rest emotionally in the middle of the storm. And that rest is important because it helps us think through things that we do need to think through things. It preserves the brain. It provides space for processing where we're going to need it. It can help us restore feelings. It is what's going to help us find our way back to our tears. It will restore that vulnerable feeling that we have a sense that has gone missing. And so, to go to play is not something frivolous. It's not something to avoid the reality that we're living in. It is a place that is meant to carry us over and through the reality of what we're living in. When we seem to wonder what it is that we can anchor to, Nature is here to help us. Nature has not abandoned us. Nature is here guiding and leading us through it. And so we need to find our way to get to our play. And so Gordon talks about, a lot of the traditional playgrounds for emotion, laughter, humor, drawing, painting, drama, theater, dance, movement, singing, irony, wordplay, stories, teasing, silliness. What draws you out? Don't try to force these. Find what naturally comes to the surface for you. Where do you feel the least inertia? What just seems to, right now, it's like, you know what, I just need to move. I need to move. Okay, I need to be outside. Do I go ride my bike? What do I go for a drive? Do I move things around in the garden? What is it that I do? Do I move bags of soil around? Oh, those simple chores of weeding. I've never thought weeding could be so wonderful, but man, it's a wonderful thing for frustration, I tell you. So, whatever it is that you have in front of you, try to find a look for those doorways. Listen to those little threads inside of you that says, this feels good. Do more of this. As long as it's not hurting anybody and productive and it's got these characteristics of play and it can be safely, contained in play, then give way to it. Give way to it. And of course, how do we facilitate it? Here's some other ways to think about, to dance. A lot of you have talked about dancing. It's wonderful. Nature, I think, is people are absolutely craving nature and the solidity of nature, of the permanence of nature. Music is wonderful for opening up those doorways and will speak to you in your heart in different ways. And again, just let yourself be led here by nature. It isn't frivolous. There is a way through here, and play is part of that. And you can see again all of these different playgrounds for emotions. How do we cultivate these? How do we create the space for them? We've got space now, but how do we actually uh, yearn to move towards these things and be intentional in our acts this way to help immunize us, to help carry us through, to allow emotions to be expressed, to help us make sense of things that sometimes there are no words for. Um, the answer long term is that play will help carry us through this. It is a place that is very much a part of cultivating and building resiliency. Why? Because in play, we are safe from the storms in our life. We are safe from the realities in our life. In play, we can have ultimate expression without having to say what it is um, that seems unbearable to even think about or to even find words for. And so in play, we feel safe, even though we may not be in the truest sense. But in those moments that we are in play, the world feels right. And when that is true, the brain says, okay, defense is down. Here it is that we will find our tears one step removed because there is safety in this little incubation or whatever you want to call it, this little space, this force field around us that play provides because of the characteristics of not being real, not having to fix a problem, being able to have a sense of freedom that engages you. Uh, Again, when you feel that safety because of those characteristics, because of that space that is created, the bubble that lifts you out of everyday life, then the feelings can be more restored. The sense of sadness, it doesn't have to be about whatever is real. There can be a sense of sadness that is just put on. That is a story, someone else's story that isn't working out. Excuse me, the expression of sadness, the brain takes that as expression. And so it doesn't have to be direct for it to work to give us a place of rest. And of course, in this true play, there is a sense of agency. There's a sense of will that is preserved where we do feel restored, where we do feel strong enough. The other day I just thought, oh, I just have to do some crafts for a while. And I was doing some crafts and I did it for quite a while. And at the end of it, I don't know what happened. It was all about frustration and making stuff. But at the end of it, I felt restored. I felt strong enough. I felt capable enough to take on the next step of whatever is required to take on. And so we don't necessarily have to understand all of the magic that happens in play. I think what's important is just to know that play is truly magic. It's truly magic when it comes to our emotional system. It truly was nature's gift to us. I think that's the key, is that not to lose sight of that and to look for those doorways, to look for where there is no inertia, to try to push open those places where we can find some islands in the middle of the storm and to let it carry us here. The beautiful movie Life is Beautiful about the Italian occupation in World War II is the best example of this. It's not a movie I could bear to watch at this point because it's too much. I just know that the answer is play. And it's so interesting when I listen to my kids playing, I think, oh, okay, they're okay. They're okay. They're playing. Nature's got them. I can take a breath. I can take a break here. I can go play. I can go plan whatever it is that I need to plan, sort out whatever it is I need to sort out, pay attention to whatever I need to pay attention to, finances, whatever it's going to be in the days ahead. That is when we are able to get to some of the work that we need to do. Some of you may have seen this cartoon. So I'm sorry, it didn't. I had to reduce the what do you call it, the graphics here for it to load up properly. I found this cartoon in 2010, and I can't believe how this has endured with time, the message being so clear. Here is little Jeffrey. He's looking out at the ocean of all these imaginary things that scare him, probably like many of us, some of them larger than life, but appear very invisible at this point in time. And so he has got the universal cry for help, Daddy, Daddy, where are you? And what does Daddy do? He moves on over to him, says, I'm right here, Jeffrey. Yes, contact and closeness is important. The challenge is that for Jeffrey, these monsters still exist out there. For all of us, the monsters still do exist out there. Togetherness is important. Yes, togetherness provides a balm for all of this. Togetherness provides a sense of safety. But we have emotions that are still stirred up in the storm. So what is also the answer here? The answer is for Jeffrey's dad to say, let's go play. Not only for Jeffrey, but for him as well. Uh, this play that provides the emotional valve, the safety valve, the emotional release that allows the emotions to move, to not get stuck, to not get pent up, to not create more emotional problems as a result of the incredible, water that's like moving behind a dam that with enough pressure, it's going to burst the dam. And so what this emotion does is this play does is it carries our emotions. It carries them towards expression. It carries them to release and it softens us one step at a time. And so to play, we should release ourselves. That is the answer. When we don't have the work that we need to do, we can try to find our islands of play to release ourselves to. So the challenge is here, of course, is that we need to let play carry us when our hearts need it the most. Are we at that time? Yes, we are. It needs to carry us through this. It will carry us through this. And of course, it will be the pathway to leading us home to our beautiful feelings, some which are appearing in spurts and bits, and sometimes for some of us, a little bit more. Don't worry, your tears are there, your words are still there, but play, it's a time for play. It's a time for emotional expression. If we can get to this, then nature will carry us through the rest of it. There'll be a day for reflection. There'll be a day to write out what has happened. There'll be a day to make sense of it all. But right now, we got to take care of our hearts. We got to take care of our emotion. We've got to find expression that doesn't overload the system, expression that provides safe release for our own relationships and for our own emotional vulnerability. And so this is what we need to do, is to let this carry us to the degree that we can find play, open those doorways, and know that we are adaptable, we are able, our tears will come back, our words will come back, we will make sense, we will find meaning. But in the middle of the storm, you find your places of rest so that you can endure the storm that is ahead. And that is what play is. That is nature's gift to us.